Transmigrated into the vicious female supporting character of a Yandere novel, I tied up the villain, we ate together, lived together, and I kept a close watch on him, controlling his every move, all while replicating everything he had done to the female lead. All the while, I coaxed, deceived, and brainwashed him with a sweet smile, saying, "I love you." Later, when the villain was rescued, I was put on trial. He hesitated and changed his testimony. "Actually, she was quite good to me. There's no other way. I'm even more twisted than he is." I got dumped. It all started when I suggested installing a camera in the bathroom. My boyfriend finally seemed unable to hold back any longer and screamed hysterically, "Sarah, are you insane? We already have 4 surveillance cameras installed at home." I looked at him innocently and asked with a pitiful tone, "Why are you angry? I just wanted to see you more." He shuddered and said, "You're really a psychopath. I shouldn't have been so foolish to fall for your looks back then." I tilted my head in confusion, "But when you confessed, didn't you say you liked how clingy I am?" "I regret it, only a freak could handle someone like you." He forcefully shook off my hand, looking utterly distraught. "I'm just an ordinary person, please let me go, let's break up." But I couldn't bear to let him go, because I hadn't had my fill of looking at his face yet, seeing his unstable emotions. I had no choice but to lock him in the bathroom and suggested he reconsider. However, he started frantically kicking the door inside, shouting that he would call the police to arrest me. Seeing how stubborn he was, I sighed and added another lock. Then I returned to the bedroom, hugged the pillow that still carried his scent, and fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up, I had transmigrated into the Yandere novel I read last night. The wealthy and powerful villain took a liking to the innocent, naive female lead, forcibly separated her from the male lead, and brought her back to keep as his captive. While the male and female leads fought wits and courage to resist, they became each other's only light, saving one another, and eventually joined forces to send the villain to prison. At this point, the female lead had already been kidnapped by the villain, and the male lead had been beaten and hospitalized. Fortunately, I remembered what my ex-boyfriend once said. "Only a pervert could handle someone like you." Under the mask, the corners of my lips couldn't help but curl up slightly. I raised my hand and knocked on the door. "Honey, I'm here to see you." The door opened. The villain had an extremely handsome face. His features were refined, his expression gentle. He wore a light gray home-style sweater, and his hair was soft and fluffy, making him look completely harmless. No one could have imagined that in the pitch-black basement beneath his feet, a young girl was being held captive. "Hello." He looked at me with a gentle smile, but I noticed his slightly tense body. I knew that he was holding a dagger behind the door, because I am too. I gazed at him greedily. He was so handsome, 10,000 times more handsome than my ex-boyfriend. To keep my gaze from being too intense, I lowered the brim of my hat and raised the takeout box in my hand. "Hello, I'm here to deliver your order." His smile faded slightly. "Takeout, sorry. I didn't order any takeout." I pretended to check the order. "Building 1, community." "That's correct." He hesitated for a moment, then reached out to take the takeout bag. His wrist was pale and delicate, his fingers as slender and beautiful as bamboo shoots. I stared intently, thinking to myself, silver handcuffs would suit him well. It's the neighborhood next door. In the end, he returned the takeout to me and patiently gave me directions. As I left, I could still feel his wary gaze. Like needles on my back, he was annoyed at having his business interrupted by an outsider, but I was thrilled. As I passed by a trash can, I casually tossed the takeout I had bought into it, along with the hat and mask. Reflected in the glass was a sweet and harmless smiling face, with droopy puppy-like eyes, a slightly upturned nose, full lips, and 2 dimples adorning the cheeks. Who would be wary of such a face? Humming a tune, I cheerfully dialed the phone. "Hello. I'd like to urgently order a sturdy iron cage." "Yes, it's for a large dog. It hasn't been trained yet, so it might be quite aggressive." I took one last look at the villa behind me and hung up the phone with a smile. "It's fine, I'm very good at taming dogs." At the same time the cage was completed, all the information about the antagonist Lucas was also delivered. Combining the novel's plot, I became the person who understood him best in this world. In summary, it's a story of a mother who died young, a father who gambles, a child who gets beaten, a broken home, a wandering boy who meets her, vows to work hard, refuses to be subservient, and then, at a chance encounter, she falls in love. I sighed. Aside from that face, everything else was so cliched and repulsive. Timing it out, the male lead's body has almost fully recovered. I anonymously sent him the address of the banquet Lucas is about to attend, along with the invitation. Hoping he'd make some effort to stir up trouble, I waited outside his house. My husband looked devastatingly handsome in a suit. After he left, I boldly entered the password and sneaked inside. Lucas's house was large and very clean, so clean it felt devoid of human presence, with hardly any entertainment facilities. After all, his only hobby in life was pursuing the female lead. I wasn't in a hurry to meet the legendary female lead. Instead, I took my time exploring, touching, and smelling everything related to him. Besides limited edition pens, silk pajamas, and an expensive wine cabinet, there were handcuffs, whips, blindfolds, and insulating tape of various sizes. I picked up a pair of thin white thigh-high stockings and examined them with great interest. Lucas likes this type, it seems. What a coincidence. So do I. After admiring enough, I found a hidden button somewhere on the movable bookshelf and made my way to the basement, despite all efforts to arrange it. The place was inevitably damp and dim. Lucas hadn't taken good care of the person, but I wouldn't be as careless as him. The sound of high heels hitting the ground echoed loudly in the empty, dim space. In the corner, chains rustled as the little white rabbit was startled by me. I turned on the flashlight and revealed a friendly, harmless smile. Don't be afraid, I'm here to save you. The female lead is named Mia, despite her soft and sweet name. She hasn't lost her vigilance even after days of imprisonment. She stared at me, her eyes wide and round, slightly reddened from the strong light, making her look particularly pitiful. It's you, how did you get in? She is very beautiful, so I answered patiently. I came in through the main door. Mia fell silent, pursing her lips tightly as she watched me fiddle with the lock using a wire. Snap, disbelief flashed in her eyes. You, the joy of being rescued brought tears to Mia's eyes. She looked at me with deep emotion, her dark pupils glistening beautifully with moisture. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have doubted you. Let's go together. Lucas will be back soon. What are you doing? Amid her uncontrollable gasp, I weighed the chain in my hand and casually snapped the freshly unlocked handcuff shut around my own wrist. A perfect fit. I'm not leaving. I curled my lips into a smile. You're out. I'll stay here and have some fun with him. It took some effort to persuade the female lead to leave me behind, so I had barely settled into bed when I heard hurried footsteps. Lucas finally realized it was a diversion tactic, but unfortunately, his treasure had already been stolen by me. I comfortably hugged a cushion, gazing expectantly toward the door. I finally understood why Lucas insisted on keeping the basement so dimly lit. As he stepped out of the darkness, moving steadily and decisively against the light, he resembled a beast unleashed, bringing an unprecedented sense of oppression. Alert, uneasy, relaxed, he's using the suspension bridge effect to make the little bunny dependent on him. Lucas, truly a pervert. My heart pounded like a drum, beating so fiercely against my chest it felt like it might explode. The excitement sent shivers through my scalp like an electric current. I buried my head in the blanket, relying only on my hearing to imagine Lucas slowing his steps and gradually approaching my bedside. Mia, his voice was soft and hoarse, pleasant to the ear, and it would surely sound delightful when called out. I smelled the clean, dry scent of the quilt and felt a hand land on the top of my head, stroking me like a cat. From top to bottom, starting lightly and growing heavier, until he suddenly grabbed my hair roots and yanked my head back. My smile fell into those gloomy and cold eyes. Lucas's eyes were bloodshot, his face flashing with the murderous intent and anger of being fooled. He grabbed my neck and demanded, "Where is my Mia?" I said, 3, what, 2, 1, the deliberately controlled, gentle breaths I had been maintaining finally turned into unrestrained, heavy gasps the moment Lucas collapsed weakly. The air in the basement was still somewhat stale, and Lucas had been too agitated. Otherwise, he would have definitely noticed. The dosage I used was a bit small, so he didn't lose consciousness immediately, but even though his body was limp and powerless, his gaze remained fiercely intense. He wanted to kill me, so did I. I raised my hand and wrapped the chain around his neck, loop after loop, then tightened it. That face, made vivid and beautiful by the brink of death, was deeply imprinted in my eyes, and I almost couldn't bear to use any more force. "Sleep now, darling," I coaxed in a sweet voice. "You've worked hard, the pain will be gone soon." I suspect Lucas is already awake. He is now locked in an iron cage by me, with beautiful silver chains around his neck, hands, and feet. Most of his pale, handsome face is covered by a blindfold, and he lies quietly and obediently on the cage floor. Like a sleeping beauty, however, I have been sitting here observing him, so even the slightest change in his breathing did not escape my notice. I guess he must be very uneasy, panicked, and helpless right now, his mind racing as he tries to make sense of the situation. He must think he has been kidnapped by some enemy or arrested by the police. I sat quietly in the chair, watching him stumble around like a little lamb with its eyes still closed. Despair. You'll find yourself locked in an iron cage like a dog, your face pressed with red marks, your hands and feet numb from being unable to stretch. Such inhumane treatment quickly rules out the possibility of a detention center, leaving only one option. You must be thinking that. Lucas's soft, crimson lips had grown somewhat dry. I watched with pity as he kept lightly moistening them, and my own throat felt parched in sympathy. "It's you," he spoke, "the delivery person from that day." I couldn't help but lean forward a little. "I'm so happy that my husband remembered me so quickly. It seems our relationship is progressing smoothly. There might be some misunderstanding here. We can sit down and have a proper talk." Lucas tilted his head slightly, listening carefully to the sounds in the room, as if trying to determine my position through my breathing. Unfortunately, he was destined to be disappointed, because I wasn't in the room at all, on the monitor. Lucas was still trying to persuade me with both reason and emotion. He offered me many tempting compensations and promised not to hold me accountable for anything. He even hinted that if I let him go, I could do whatever I wanted to him, a very tempting option. But being too eager to reveal your needs will only put you at a disadvantage. Lucas quickly realized this as well. He no longer politely pleaded. As his gentle smile faded, his entire demeanor exuded indifference and coldness. Finally, he only asked one question: "What did you do to Mia?" How devoted he is. I originally only planned to leave him for one day, but now I've changed my mind. Let's lock him up for 3 days first. Even the villainess has her own scenes. In the original story, I was the young lady infatuated with the male lead, Jack, jealous that Mia, this ordinary woman, had won the favor of my crush. I constantly created obstacles for her. This included, but was not limited to, secretly spreading rumors about the female lead, deliberately driving a wedge between the male and female leads, and obstructing their plans to save themselves. In the end, Lucas made sure I ended up with nothing. On my phone, my lackey was tipping me off. "Sarah, Mia is just too shameless. When Jack was so badly injured before, she deliberately hid and didn't show up, and now she has the nerve to come back." In the photo, the young couple was huddled together in the infirmary, like two little yellow chicks snuggling for warmth, looking tender and inexperienced. I glanced at it a couple of times and swiped it away. No need to send me any more messages about Jack in the future. Bored. Afterwards, I asked my academic advisor for a week's sick leave. Sarah maintains a good public image, so the advisor quickly approved the leave. She probably couldn't even imagine that the well-behaved and adorable student in her eyes was picking out lingerie for a wild man. I don't intend to let Lucas keep his dignity or anything like that. He's too arrogant. If I want to have an equal conversation with him, I have to break his legs first and make him kneel. Sigh, having a stubborn husband isn't great either. To maintain our relationship, I've really gone to great lengths. The long silent surveillance showed some movement again. Lucas needs to use the bathroom. He had been holding it in all day, and finally couldn't hold back any longer. He probably knew how shameful his spineless appearance was, biting his lip tightly, his face deathly pale, his fingers clenched so hard that his knuckles turned white. He had suffered too much as a child, and now that he had gained power, he clung fiercely to his pride, making him lower his head even once felt like breaking his bones. After all, I still needed to use him, so I didn't plan to make things too difficult for him for long. But I turned on the microphone and gently commanded, "Take off your clothes first." After waiting for a long while, Lucas finally undressed. He unbuttoned his suit jacket, tie, shirt, belt, and trousers one by one, like a subtle invitation process. The expensive clothes hung from his wrists and ankles, which were bound by shackles. He knelt there, completely naked, his skin taut with resistance and shyness, flushed with a rosy hue. Lucas said in a strained voice, "I don't have any sharp objects on me, you can remove the handcuffs now." He tilted his head and waited for a while, but heard no response. Just as he was suppressing his anger, I, who had been standing barefoot in front of him for a long time, slowly reached out my hand through the gap in the railing and placed it on his head. It was very soft. He was startled by me, shuddering all over, but soon understood and forced himself to lean closer to me. He straightened his back, rubbing the top of his head against my palm, and said gently, "Thank you for being willing to see me," he said. "I know you're not a bad girl, you just don't know how to face me." I cooed softly and pushed my luck. "Honey, can you forgive me?" Lucas choked up for a moment. "I remember your face, it's very cute. You're still in college, right?" "Yes, you've reached the legal marriage age. You're still young, and it's inevitable to make mistakes. If you hadn't done this, perhaps we would have met under better circumstances." He slightly raised his head, a gentle smile playing on his lips, continuously exuding charm. He completely avoided mentioning why there was a girl imprisoned in his basement. "I absolutely love how he's trying to be clever like this. It's so adorable." I couldn't help but laugh. "You're right, dear. It's all your fault. Otherwise, since I love you so much, I definitely wouldn't have the heart to treat you like this." I bent down to unlock him, tugging on the long chain around his neck, and teased, "Here, boy, here." Lucas reached up and removed the blindfold, suddenly exposed to the light. His eyes welled up with reflexive tears, his lashes damp as he looked up at me, looking utterly pitiful. I make a peace sign with my hand. "Are you captivated by my cuteness?" His gaze was obscure, staring at me for a moment before he suddenly asked, "What's your name?" "Sarah, Sarah." He spread his arms, smiling helplessly and indulgently, like a lover tolerating their partner's mischief, and whispered temptingly, "Do you want a hug?" He became aware of my morbid desire for him. I was deeply moved. "Honey, you're so good to me." Then I threw myself firmly into his embrace, warm, fulfilling. I sighed contentedly. Lucas's skin was smooth and scorching hot. I couldn't get enough of caressing his shoulders and back, desperately inhaling the faint, elusive cold fragrance. Then I pressed the stun gun against his side. Zzz. Lucas's hand, reaching for my neck, froze and he instantly lost consciousness. His body was convulsing and trembling, his handsome face still frozen in hatred. I gently touched his cheek, leaned down to give him a kiss, and said coquettishly, "Does it hurt?" "Honey, it's all your fault. Men who hit women don't come to a good end. I'll forgive you this time, but don't do it again, okay?" Taking advantage of the opportunity, I gave him a bath and fed him some glucose. When I was wheeling him back to the cage in the wheelchair, Lucas woke up, weakly grabbing my wrist. He pleaded softly, "I'm hungry." I frowned, but before I could say anything, Lucas spoke again in a gentle voice, "Wife." My heart blossomed with joy, and I gleefully tied him to the wheelchair, put on an apron, and hurried into the kitchen. Through the living room surveillance, I saw Lucas looking around. His phone and car keys were placed by me in the cabinet. Lucas glanced discreetly at me, who was bustling about in the kitchen, and moved the wheelchair by rubbing his feet against the floor. Siri, in just a few minutes, the sides of his temples were already damp with sweat. Lucas quietly activated the phone's voice assistant. "Call Leo's assistant." "I'm here." I gently placed my hands on his shoulders from behind. Lucas froze, his muscles tensed up, rigid as steel, so easily teased. Smiling, I wrapped my arms around his neck and lightly kissed the corner of his tense lips. "Honey, you're so timid. It's not like I'm going to eat you." I didn't reach out to hang up the call. Instead, I tapped the speakerphone button. My lips brushed against his ear as I whispered softly, "Tell Assistant Leo that your headache has flared up again and that you'll be resting at QS Garden for a month. Make sure no one disturbs you." Lucas suddenly looked up, his lips grazing my cheek. For the second time, he wore an expression of utter astonishment. "How did you know?" I leaned in close, seeing my own reflection in his pure black pupils. "I know everything, darling. I came into this world for you, President Lucas." The voice on the other end of the line sounded anxious as the call connected. "We finally managed to reach you." Lucas's pupils trembled, and a look of struggle appeared on his face. He lowered his head, the shadow of his bangs obscuring his eyes, and only his clear, calm voice could be heard. I have a bit of a headache and need to go to QS Garden for a month of recuperation. Please don't disturb me during this time. After hanging up, he took a few deep breaths to steady himself and forced a faint smile. Put the knife down. There's no need to act as if you're facing a great enemy. I won't defy you. I casually tucked the knife behind my waist and pushed the wheelchair to the dining table with satisfaction. Husband, let me feed you. Having almost gone without food or drink for 2 days, Lucas looked extremely weak. He no longer resisted but obediently opened his lips and swallowed, beneath his soft black hair. A pair of dark eyes quietly stared at me, silently assessing and speculating. These eyes were exceptionally beautiful, elegantly shaped, with a clear distinction between black and white, and thick, dense lashes that drooped gently. A charming mole adorned the corner of his eye, making them appear gentle and affectionate from every angle. A pair of deceptive eyes. I stared at him obsessively, my hand tilting, and the rice porridge spilled all over. The milky white thick liquid embarrassingly dripping from the corner of Lucas's lips. I gave an awkward smile. Sorry, I'll lick it. Oh no, wipe it clean for you right away. Lucas lifted his eyelids slightly, his crimson tongue sweeping across the corner of his lips. Then suddenly curled his lips into a smile. Sarah, his lips were beautifully shaped and vividly colored. I stared at the flesh of his tongue hidden inside his mouth, wondering how soft and moist it must be, and what kind of lewd, wet sounds it would make when it stirred. His words drifted into my ears a beat too late. I'll listen to you, but can you return my phone to me after a month? Seeing me silent, Lucas pleaded even more gently. I won't run away, and I won't contact the police. It's just that, as you can see, there are many matters at the company that need my attention. You don't want to ruin my hard work and make me dislike you, right? Who cares? I grumbled inwardly, then obediently nodded. Giving Lucas some sense of control would help him adapt positively to the current situation. Otherwise, locking him up every day would be quite exhausting for me. He's really pushing his luck. I knew you weren't that kind of inconsiderate girl, Sarah. Could you please stop tying me up? My arms really hurt. You're my husband. Of course I'll be considerate of you. I'm also well versed in the art of PUA, and pitifully refused. But you're so strong. For my peace of mind, could you bear with it a little longer, please? I love you so much. You wouldn't be so cruel as to use my feelings to deceive me, right? Lucas's expression quickly twisted. Right, at least give me something to wear, please. I took out the clothes I had prepared earlier. Lucas stared at the thin piece of fabric hanging from my fingertips, squeezed his eyes shut, and breathed rapidly, as if he was about to faint from anger. What? Finally feeling the shame and humiliation of not being respected. What did you say when you treated Mia like this? Oh, right, white suits you, like an angel. I repeated his line. No need to be shy. We were bound to reach this point sooner or later, weren't we, in the end? Lucas swallowed his pride and picked a black and white male-made outfit with suspenders to change into. The extremely low neckline couldn't cover his snow-white chest. He crossed his arms, and the silver chains on his wrists and ankles jingled as he asked in shame, "Is this acceptable now?" Wait a moment. I smiled as I fastened a leather garter around his thigh, and when my fingers accidentally brushed against his inner thigh. Lucas tensed up so suddenly that he nearly lost control and kicked me away. He took a deep breath and turned his head away, trying to suppress his emotions. I grabbed his chin and turned his face back toward me. Honey, look at the camera. Crack. I pinned the developed photo on the wall, right where Lucas would see it the moment he opened his eyes. I whispered sweetly, beginning his nightmare. Honey, let's stay this happy forever. For an entire week, Lucas wore those outrageous clothes. Chained by me, and kept under close watch, washing up, eating, napping, entertainment. Except for the kitchen, there are no sharp objects in the house, and Lucas has nowhere to hide any weapons. In fact, apart from the room where he is confined and my bedroom, all the other doors have been removed, making the entire home completely open and visible. Visibly, he has become somewhat restless, frequently staring blankly at the closed door of my bedroom, in the evening. Before returning to his own dog cage, Lucas gently hugged me from behind and said in a disappointed tone, "Can't we sleep together?" I lowered my head. His fingertips were extremely close to the electric shock device at my waist, almost within easy reach, and Lucas seemed not to have noticed yet. resting his chin on the top of my head, nuzzling affectionately. He was much taller than me, and from this position, I could easily hear his heartbeat, slightly restless, like a fine rain beating a rapid, dense rhythm. No, I'm quite conservative. I placed my hand over the back of his and gently pulled it away. His body fat percentage was low, making the veins on the back of his hand particularly prominent. I traced the shape of the veins with my fingertips, and he, as if ticklish, turned his palm over and caught my hand. Outside, a storm raged with thunder and lightning, while inside, the brightly lit room made everything seem as if there was nowhere to hide. Those eyes, capable of expressing both joy and reproach, dared not meet mine, awkwardly darting around. His eyelashes fluttered like butterfly wings, and his voice, dry and tense, revealed the truth. I'm afraid of thunder. Could you stay with me tonight? I find it amusing as I look at him, gently scratching his palm with my fingertip and drawing out my words. Honey, you've been quite clingy lately. Lucas instantly blushes bright red. His fair skin flushes first at the roots of his ears, the heat misting his eyes with moisture. He pulls his hand away from mine, pretending to be aloof. Forget it. Then, he retreats to his own cage, curling up with his back to me, his spine tense. It seems he really is scared. I made a move to close the cage door. Good night. Upon hearing this, Lucas quickly turned over, his long, pale fingers getting caught in the door. He winced in pain and took a sharp breath. He didn't let go, gripping the bars tightly as he looked up at me angrily. Sarah, is this what you call loving me? I leaned down to look at him. In the darkness, only his face stood out, pale as snow, like a cluster of jade hairpins emerging in the night, soft, graceful, and full of emotion. Only I know the ugliness beneath his handsome appearance. Only I know the calculation behind his gentle smile. I have touched his thorns, so I understand. He is not so easily broken. I have plenty of time to enjoy and play. Sorry, I said without a hint of apology in my tone. Smiling cheerfully, I'm too foolish. I've never been in love before and don't know how to please a boy. If I make you feel trapped, please bear with me, darling. After I finished speaking, I forcefully pushed the door, and Lucas finally winced in pain and withdrew his hand, only to stubbornly reach through the gap in the railing and grab my ankle. His fingers were cold, coiling up like a venomous snake as he scrutinized me and pressed. Do you really love me? I do. I tilted my head, gazing at him sincerely, fervently, and with deep affection, especially, very, extremely, super much, so, don't resist me, husband. After a week of vacation, I'm getting ready to go to school. While washing up in the morning, Lucas stared at my skirt and asked in a strange tone, are you going out? I carefully applied lip gloss in front of the dressing mirror, then held out my palm. Lucas handed me a tissue without even realizing how smoothly he had performed the action. I sneered inwardly, pressed a tissue to the corner of my mouth, tossed it into the trash, and avoided answering. Instead, I looked up and gave him a kiss. Wait for me at home, sweetie. Lucas had grown accustomed to my sneak attacks. At first, he couldn't help but show a look of disgust, but now he was numb to it. Still unwilling to give up, he asked me in a roundabout way, will you be back for dinner tonight? He wanted to confirm the time when I wouldn't be at home. I deliberately put on a regretful expression. Lucas raised an eyebrow, suppressing the excitement between his brows, and deliberately sighed. He didn't know that at this moment, there were a total of 14 hidden cameras in this house. His every move is within my grasp. As soon as I returned to school, a crowd of people gathered around me. Some were concerned about my health, others were digging for gossip, and some were even offering themselves up, chattering away, creating a lively scene. Sarah, Jack has been asking about you all week. Someone leaned in and whispered flatteringly. It seems he had another argument with Mia. Congratulations, Sarah, your persistence has finally paid off. Asking about me, I sneered. I already said I'm not interested in him. Stop bringing it up, it's annoying. Sarah, Sarah. A stammering voice came from behind me. I turned around and was surprised to find it was Mia. The girl beside me showed a teasing expression. Speak of the devil, and he shall appear. Mia, if you can't control your man, why come looking for our Sarah? Mia stood there awkwardly, her fingers twisting the edge of her skirt, seemingly too scared to approach me. I smiled and walked toward her. What's wrong? Mia breathed a sigh of relief, looking me up and down with slightly reddened eyes. Did he? Did he give you a hard time, Lucas? I thought of his exposed appearance and smiled ambiguously. He was very well behaved. Don't let him fool you. He's a pervert. Mia grew anxious, stammering and hesitating as if she wanted to say more. I led her to a quiet corner. Go on, you. Mia looked at me tentatively. Did you already know that person? The smile at the corner of my lips faded, and under my calm gaze, Mia's head lowered further and further. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have doubted you, but you appeared so coincidentally. Still, I wanted to thank you in person. She mustered the courage to look up. Even though you dislike me, you did save me. Thank you, Sarah, but I won't give up Jack for you. I hope you won't do the things you used to do anymore. You'll meet someone better. Thank you. I nodded. I've already met him. Someone as bad, as twisted, and as crazy as me. Mia hesitated before turning to leave. If it really wasn't you, then stay away from Lucas. Take care of yourself. I saw the hatred in her eyes clearly. She must take revenge on Lucas. That won't do. Without him, who else in this world could accept someone like me? I opened my phone and checked the home surveillance footage, frowning unconsciously while watching. Where is Lucas? On the way back in the car, I watched the surveillance footage from the beginning with a grim expression. After I left, Lucas ate as usual, cleaned up, read for a while, and then returned to his bedroom, as if preparing to sleep. I mimicked his thought process, deliberately making that room light-proof and soundproof, painting the walls a depressing light gray, with the lighting controls in my hands. The emptiness, silence, and darkness amplify a person's sense of loneliness, so Lucas can only satisfy his social needs through me. In the surveillance footage, Lucas had his back to the camera, his body trembling. After a while, he crumpled a piece of tissue paper and walked into the bathroom. I raised an eyebrow. Lucas slowly took off his clothes, turned on the shower, and stood naked under the surveillance. Amid the spreading mist, he suddenly lifted his eyelids and looked directly in my direction. His gentle and affectionate eyes were now cold and mocking, boiling with hatred. At some point, he had already broken free from the chains on his hands. Both of his wrists were rubbed raw and bleeding, the blood dripping down his pale, slender fingers, only to be washed into a pale pink by the flowing water. You, just, wait. He silently mouthed the words at me, and in the next second, he raised his hand and threw something. With a thud, a large, water-soaked wad of tissue paper clung firmly to the camera lens, completely blocking my view. The faint sounds gradually faded away. I calmly switched to several other hidden cameras and once again saw the entire process of Lucas's escape, including the direction he fled. Driver, please turn around. Honey, did you think you could get rid of me so easily? You've underestimated my determination. I twisted open my lipstick and happily touched up my makeup. What expression will he have on his face when we meet? I'm really looking forward to it. I followed Lucas back to his former home. After so many years, this old, dilapidated area has become even more desolate, with hardly anyone living here, without needing guidance. I skillfully navigated through the winding alleys and stopped in front of a building. Lucas used to live here. This should be the place where he was most miserable, most helpless, with no warmth or good memories. After successfully escaping, why did he come back here? While I was lost in thought, a series of hurried footsteps suddenly came from behind. Just as I was about to turn around, a sharp pain shot through my neck, and the ground gradually loomed larger before my eyes. Thud. I collapsed at someone's feet. Exquisite leather shoes, perfectly pressed trouser cuffs. Lucas crouched down, and through the gap between his baseball cap and mask, his eyes gleamed with malice. His lips moved slightly as he uttered two icy words. Fool. I had been imprisoned in return. I felt a sense of novelty as I shook the chain around my neck. It was thick and heavy, unlike the delicate designs I usually preferred. This chain seemed sturdy enough to restrain an elephant. Are you that afraid of me? I tilted my head and studied the man in front of me. In the dilapidated basement, the only light came from a flickering fluorescent bulb overhead. Lucas sat before me, legs crossed, staring down at me from his elevated position. Upon hearing this, he sneered, still talking tough even when you're about to die. I looked at him pitifully. Honey, are you really going to treat me like this? I was wrong. Can you please let me go? I squeezed out a few tears and began to sob softly, as if I were truly frightened. This cowardly demeanor greatly pleased him. Lucas raised his eyebrows slightly, his fingers tapping lightly on his knee. Let you go? Fine. Then tell me, how did you know the password to this place and my house? Huh, you little pervert. Although he asked this, based on his behavior of not contacting anyone after escaping, it was clear that he suspected there was a mole in the company. I deliberately shook my head in fear. I can't say, with such little courage, and yet you still dare to covet me. He stood up with an indifferent expression. In that case, you can stay here forever. What a cheapskate, not even giving me a mattress. Is he getting back at me for making him sleep in the dog crate? He really holds a grudge over the smallest things. Husband, my tearful voice made him pause. He turned around, his brows furrowed, his expression impatient. I looked at him hesitantly. Will you still come to see me? Lucas froze for a few seconds, seemingly amused by my innocence. Of course, his smile was brimming with blatant malice, a wild indulgence swirling in his eyes that made him look even more captivating. I'll come to collect your body. What a lawless scoundrel. It seems he hates me to the bone. I feel a bit regretful. Behavioral psychology suggests that 21 days can form a new habit. I was planning to patiently simmer it like a frog in warm water. Lucas, you forced my hand. Behavioral psychology is useless, but criminal psychology should come in handy, right? I'll talk. My voice was as faint as a mosquito's buzz. Could you come a little closer to me? Don't try any tricks. Even as he said this, he still walked over to me as I had asked. I thrust the needle into his neck. What a pity. My voice was filled with regret. Honey, you shouldn't have refused to search me just because you were disgusted. I reached into Lucas's pocket, pulled out the keys. He lay on the ground, limbs weak, his consciousness slowly fading away. His lips were enticingly moving, but the words he spoke were unclear. That face, filled with anger, resentment, humiliation, and regret, was truly beautiful. Shoo, shoo. I kissed him on the cheek, leaving a smear of crimson lipstick at the corner of his eye, like the blush left behind by tears. Even though you treat me like this, I still love you so much. I raised the stool high, then brought it down with a smile and all my strength. Since you don't want to be human, then be a dog. This time, there were no privileges. I put him in an even smaller cage and didn't take him to see a doctor. Lucas could only drag his broken right leg and curl up in the cage, barely clinging to life. If he wanted food and water, he had to bark like a dog for me. In the original work, this was how Lucas brainwashed Mia. He set his own name as the safe word. Once Mia called it out during the abuse, he would immediately stop and provide her with food and medicine. And so, Lucas planted a mental anchor in Mia's mind, a subconscious influence that would haunt her for decades after her rescue. I'm not as vicious as Lucas. I just want him to remember that everything he has is in my hands. If he wants to survive, he must submit to me completely. For him, this is a tremendous humiliation, far worse than any physical torment I could inflict. People always seek advantage and avoid harm, since pleasing me can bring him temporary relief. Lucas, no matter how unwilling, will deceive himself into pretending to obey, and once he starts kneeling, he will gradually grow accustomed to a life on his knees. Better to be numb than to suffer any longer. When Lucas let out his first bark, aside from providing food and medicine, I also thoughtfully bathed him, massaged his stiff muscles, and cleaned his room. After just 1 short hour, when Lucas returned to that lightless room, his body clearly resisted. I played the audio of him barking like a dog on a loop, and his psychological defenses quickly crumbled, the time he could hold out becoming even shorter. The second time, the third time, I stroked his face, my eyes full of pity. Wouldn't it have been better to be like this from the start? If you hadn't treated me that way first, I wouldn't have had the heart to do this. Darling, from now on, be good and don't resist me anymore. At first, he would shake off my hand and curse at me, but later, perhaps out of habit, he would even curl his lips and give me a calm smile. Yes, I really regret it. Lucas leaned down, pressing his cheek against my palm, and asked cautiously, Sarah, I want to go out and get some sun. Of course, my dear, I agreed amiably, but I need to stay by your side to protect you. It was visibly clear that the light in Lucas's eyes quickly faded. I felt a bit disappointed. Could he not even endure this much? It seems my methods were too gentle, allowing him to develop unrealistic fantasies again. I affectionately wrapped my arms around his neck and said gently, Honey, I'm really insecure, locking you up, confining you, and not letting you go out. It's all because I love you. So the fact that we still can't walk hand in hand under the sunlight is all your fault." Lucas's long bangs fell, covering his eyebrows and eyes. He said hoarsely, "I know." The long period of confinement had made Lucas even paler, thinner, and more sluggish. His mind seemed hazy, and he had lost the fierce determination he once had, allowing me to manipulate him as if he no longer had the will to escape. To be fair, I treated him very well, taking care of every little detail. Similarly, it was all pervasive. He lived in a place filled with my body warmth, breath, heartbeat, and words everywhere. Even if he wanted to resist, he couldn't find an opportunity. During class, I turned on the surveillance camera and often saw him curled up listlessly, resting like a sickly dog. I turned the monitor volume to the maximum, and through the headphones came his dry, low voice. "Sarah, Sarah, Sarah." He called my name, over and over again. I didn't care whether these words stemmed from love or hatred. As long as he was thinking of me wholeheartedly and incessantly, it was my victory. I curved the corners of my eyes, and in my peripheral vision, I saw Jack sitting not far away, watching me with a probing expression. After being discovered, he didn't panic at all. Instead, he showed a bright smile. I calmly shifted my gaze away. Unexpectedly, after class, Jack took the initiative to come over and strike up a conversation. "Long time no see," he said with a smile. "You've changed a lot recently." "I'm not buying it. Get straight to the point. Lucas has been missing ever since you showed up in the basement. 10 days ago, someone saw you getting into a car and heading to the old town. As far as I know, that's Lucas's hometown." Jack looked at me sharply. "Sarah, Lucas kidnapped Mia. He's a criminal. If you're harboring him, doesn't that mean you're in on it too?" I looked at him with interest. "Go on. Lucas likes Mia, and you like me, so you conspired to break us up, each getting what you wanted. Only when you realized you couldn't hide it anymore did you pretend to be the good person and rescue Mia, concealing your own crimes. Mia might be fooled by you, but I won't be. Sarah, you and Lucas are both crazy." It sounded so logical that even I was almost convinced. From the male lead's perspective, his reasoning wasn't entirely wrong. However, I straightforwardly pointed out, "That invitation was sent to you by me." Jack froze. "What? Good guess. But don't guess next time." I turned and walked away. Damn, what a hassle. I just want a love story, that's all. Such a simple wish. Why does someone always have to stand in my way? I returned home with a dark expression, opened Lucas's cage, and pulled him out. Lucas was stunned by my madness and let me push him down onto the sofa. I straddled him, pulling the silver chain around his neck with one hand, and said calmly, "You have 2 hours of activity time today." His pale skin finally regained some color. At first, Lucas allowed me to take the lead, but perhaps his remaining pride wouldn't let him be humiliated by me for long. Soon, he took the initiative himself. The silver chain left deep indentations on my hand. Lucas was breathing heavily, his eyes red-rimmed. As I pulled him closer, he braced his hands above my head. He gazed at me in a daze, his lashes damp and long, partially veiling his dark eyes as he stared at me without blinking. His expression was a mix of both pleasure and pain. They say men are most vulnerable at times like this. I arched my back and bit Lucas's throat bone. "Honey, do you love me?" "Love?" Lucas laughed, and suddenly, he erupted with a mix of resentment and ferocity in his eyes, pushing back at me like a madman. "Sarah, do you fucking love me? You call me husband, but what's the truth? I'm just a dog you keep." The way Lucas swore was strangely attractive. The mask of obedience, gentleness, refinement, and handsomeness was torn away, revealing a beast-like savagery. This was his truest self. I watched him with satisfaction. Even in a moment like this, he was breathtakingly beautiful. His sweat-dampened hair was brushed back from his forehead with my fingers. I held his face, examining his features inch by inch: thick, dark eyebrows and eyes, a straight nose, and thin, rosy lips. When he smiled, he looked gentle and refined. When he was angry, he appeared spirited and heroic, charming in both joy and displeasure, with a gaze full of emotion. I had originally thought about leaving this big problem for the male lead to handle, but now, the anger in my heart gradually faded. "Of course I love you, darling. I'm a romantic at heart." I wanted to kiss him, but Lucas turned his face away, avoiding me. My lips landed on the side of his neck, where beneath the warm skin, blood surged abundantly, and the pulse of his veins throbbed like a restless heart held between my teeth. I snapped back to reality, feeling both wronged and hurt, and looked at him with pitiful eyes. Ungrateful. I think I'm quite good-looking. The innocent type, just like Mia. But Lucas doesn't seem moved by my appearance. He watches me as if he's watching a performance. What a disappointing response. I listlessly put away my smile, slightly raised my chin, and commanded, "Hurry up." Lucas stared at me expressionlessly, then suddenly leaned down, biting my shoulder as he began to thrust. I was left speechless by his actions and could only stare blankly at the ceiling. One side of the wall was already covered with photos of Lucas. Countless faces with different angles and expressions now seemed to come alive all at once, staring at me as if they wanted to chew me up and swallow me whole. I couldn't help but shiver. At the same time, his shoulder also ached, and Lucas's muffled voice spilled from between his lips, gritted his teeth. "Sarah, I'm going to fucking kill you one of these days." Due to the intense movement, the injury in Lucas's left leg worsened. I decided to take him to the hospital. Lucas looked at me with a sarcastic expression, half smiling. "Aren't you afraid I'll run away?" He seemed to have mistakenly believed that he had gained some kind of privilege in our intimate relationship. No longer the obedient and submissive person he once was in front of me, he had become sharp-tongued, vivid, spirited, and wicked. The continuous stream of dangerous aura made me feel the same palpitations I had when I first fell in love with him. Because of that, I wasn't angry. Instead, I told him gently that if he tried to run away again, breaking his legs would be the least of his worries. Lucas scoffed. For the first time in over a month of being imprisoned by me, he was finally wearing normal clothes again. I had prepared a hoodie and a baseball cap for him, and the collar chain was perfectly hidden beneath his clothes. Lucas tugged uncomfortably at his shorts, which concealed the custom-made lock I had fitted him with. Who says only women are troubled by a sense of shame? Lucas wanted to escape, but at the very least, he had to figure out how to explain to the doctor why he was wearing a chastity lock. Sure enough, he frowned and said, "You're a pervert." I calmly slipped the key into my pocket, stared at his exposed calves, and smiled innocently. "Honey, I'm just worried that other women might try to seduce you." Lucas's face flushed red with anger as he snapped, "Sarah, you're really insane." I shamelessly held his hand and said, "Haven't you heard this saying? Hubby, the word love can be broken down into pervert. If loving you is a sickness, then I must be terminally ill, beyond any cure." It was so nauseating that even I felt like throwing up, but when I glanced sideways, Lucas was strangely silent, the tips of his ears peeking out from his hair, bright red. The sunlight was beautiful today. As I pushed Lucas out, many children were playing and laughing in the park. The wheelchair wheels rumbled over the stone pavement. Quickly catching the children's attention, they curiously gathered around Lucas, looking him over. Lucas felt a bit uncomfortable, lowering his head more and more until he finally pulled up his hood and put it on. "Go, quickly." He urgently squeezed my hand, looking utterly helpless. I pretended not to understand. "Why, didn't you want to get some sun, darling?" Lucas was about to speak but was interrupted by someone striking up a conversation nearby. "Sarah." The breakfast shop owner downstairs smiled at me. "I haven't seen you in a long time. Who is this?" Her gaze shifted back and forth between me and Lucas. "He's my brother," I replied casually, then noticed Lucas stiffen. The shop owner beamed. "Sarah, I have a nephew around your age." "Sarah," Lucas suddenly removed his hood and interjected forcefully, "we're running out of time." That handsome face instantly won the old lady over, and she began eagerly introducing her granddaughter's college classmates to Lucas. After finally managing to deal with the reluctant old lady, I found a quiet path to stop on and crouched down in front of Lucas. He looked down at me, his fists resting on his knees, his expression icy. Sunlight filtered through the dense leaves, casting shifting shadows that danced from his left eye to his right. "Are you angry?" I smiled playfully, placing my hands on his knees like a puppy, coaxing him. "I only said that because I was afraid you'd get angry. I'm so considerate and always thinking of you. How could you still be upset? Honey, you've been a bit emotionally unstable lately. Don't call me husband." Lucas brushed my hand away as if it were something dirty, his brows furrowing in disgust. "Have you been lying for so long that you've started to believe it yourself?" I stood there frozen, unsure of what to do, stung by his coldness. Tears quickly welled up in my eyes, spilling out in large drops. How can you say that to me? You know how much I love you. I looked at him with a choked sob, but Lucas remained unmoved, as if I were some unforgivable sinner. It's really too much. I only did the same thing you did. Is it really that unforgivable? I lowered my head in disappointment, tears falling on Lucas's hand. His fingers twitched slightly, then suddenly clenched tightly, the tips turning red from the pressure. It's okay, even if you don't love me, I will always love you. I wiped my eyes, stood up, and continued pushing him toward the hospital in silence, feeling dejected. The only sound was the wheels rolling over the ground, and the surroundings were unusually quiet. Lucas seemed very uncomfortable with my silence. He hesitated several times, wanting to speak, but his pride kept him from saying anything. We didn't exchange a word the entire way. It wasn't until the consultation began and the doctor asked me to step aside that Lucas suddenly looked at me and said, "Sarah." I ignored him and got up to leave without a second thought. Behind me, I could still feel that concerned gaze. I put on a heartbroken act until I disappeared from Lucas's sight, then pulled the earphones out of my pocket. That's right, I had planted a bug on him. Through the earphones, I heard Lucas's urgent voice, "Doctor, can I borrow your phone?" I couldn't help myself and snapped a hairpin in two. "Why are you trying to run away again? Haven't I been good enough to you?" I looked at the reflection in the glass, tried to frown, and made a fierce expression. After catching Lucas this time, although I will continue to hurt him, control him, and possess him, I will absolutely never smile at him again. On the other end of the headset, after being gently rejected, Lucas didn't lose heart. He lowered his voice, using that deceptive, handsome face of his, and spoke with a melancholy and dejected tone. "My girlfriend is a bit possessive. Ever since I got injured, she's been keeping a close watch on me. I just wanted to let my family know I'm safe." "Well, all right, thank you, doctor," Lucas said meekly. "You're a good person." Whose number would he dial? While laughing at him, I couldn't help but feel curious. The police, bodyguards. If it's the former, why would he go to the trouble? If it's the latter, it's undoubtedly an even more foolish move. After the beep beep, busy tone, a clear female voice came through. "Hello." My breath hitched, and the restlessness in my heart surged up again. "Mia." Lucas's voice was soft, carrying a hint of laughter, light and eerie as he said, "Long time no see. How have you been, Lucas?" On the other end, Mia nearly dropped the phone in panic. Lucas listened quietly, his voice growing even more pleased. "I've been tied up with some things lately. But don't worry, I'll come find you as soon as I'm free." He was like a killer giving a warning, slowly tormenting Mia's heart with a dull blade. "Be good and wait for me, Mia. Don't be afraid of him." Jack snatched the phone and roared furiously, "Lucas, don't think you can keep acting so arrogantly. We won't give in. I'll be waiting." Lucas handed back the phone with a gentle smile. "We can begin the session now." No wonder he's suddenly so cooperative. He's still delusional enough to think he can escape and find Mia. What a grand love. I let out a cold snort and reached for my waist, only to find nothing there. Lucas had been so obedient lately that I'd lost the habit of carrying the stun gun with me. Was I, too, being slowly boiled like a frog in warm water? Just like Lucas, my eyes darkened as I pulled out a sharp folding knife, slipped it into my pocket, and leaned against the clinic wall, waiting for someone to emerge. After a long silence, voices finally resumed in my earphones, but the voices were wrong. My heart pounded like a drum as I realized something was amiss. I rushed into the clinic without a second thought, pushing the door open. The first thing I saw was a face full of surprise and unfamiliarity, and the second was a tiny listening device thrown on the floor. It was glaringly obvious, like a provocation from Lucas. I steadied my breath and asked politely, "Doctor, may I ask where patient number 49 went just now?" "You're his girlfriend, right?" the doctor said, pointing to the empty wheelchair nearby. "That young man's leg has been healed for a while. He said he needed to use the restroom. Here, take this with you." I was played by Lucas. He ran away. He actually knew I had planted a bug on him, and calling Mia right in front of me was deliberately telling me that I am an unqualified keeper. I failed. My pet has escaped. I gripped the knife tighter and tighter. If Lucas were in front of me right now, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to stop myself from stabbing him, break his legs, bind his limbs, gag his mouth. Malicious thoughts churn in my mind. Watch him, control him, possess him, make him live every moment under my gaze. Let me invade his attention at all times, burrow into his eyes, his brain, his heart. Look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. Sarah, a familiar voice pulled me out of the sticky thoughts. I followed the sound and saw Lucas standing at the end of the corridor, backlit, making it hard to discern his expression. He stood straight, one hand in his pocket, and beckoned to me with a gesture that felt like calling a dog. Come here. My heart raced, and I immediately jogged toward him. I thought, I wanted to bury my head in his chest, but Lucas extended his index finger, pressing it against my forehead to keep me from getting closer. Thought I ran away. Power is fluid. When my emotions are stirred by him, when I no longer hold everything with ease, he gains the key to controlling my heart. He turned himself into a suspension bridge. At this moment, Lucas wore a half-smile, not the mockery of, you can be this disheveled too, nor the triumph of, you've been played by me, but the sudden realization and arrogance of, I will control you, this game, which has been overwhelmingly unfair from the very beginning. Now sees the scales of victory finally tipping in his favor. He didn't run away because he refused to accept defeat. Now, he was about to begin the hunt. As I looked at him, the beast within me was not caged but grew even more rampant. Anxiety, longing, and desire gnaw at my heart like fangs. I don't need to restrain myself, because I know he can bear it all. Lucas, you're a madman just like me, so no matter how I treat you, you'll understand, right? I let go of the knife I was gripping tightly, lifted my face, and smiled sweetly at him. Husband, let's go home. After dragging Lucas back home, I rummaged through the toolbox and pulled out a small iron axe. Lucas crossed his arms and leisurely settled onto the sofa, as if the person being glared at with bloodshot eyes and threatened with an axe wasn't him. Why, did you lie to me? I stared at him, and with every word I spoke, I swung my arm down in a chopping motion until the wheelchair was shattered into pieces. A flying screw grazed Lucas's cheek and shattered the flower pot behind him. A crimson line of blood gradually widened, yet Lucas curled his lips into a smile. You heard everything, didn't you? Today, I could have just walked away and left it at that. He elegantly crossed his legs, as if the angrier I became, the more certain he was that I wouldn't dare harm him. He thinks I am madly in love with him, and that is the root of his recklessness. In the original storyline, Lucas repeatedly managed to escape from tight encirclements and became the lingering nightmare of the male and female leads precisely because he excelled at exploiting human weaknesses, sowing discord, brainwashing, emotional manipulation, taming. He seemed born with these skills, deeply versed in such tactics. But it seems he doesn't understand that love is a different matter. If he understood, then he wouldn't misunderstand my emotions. It's not because I was angry that he ran away. I was clearly excited because I had a reason to hurt and punish him without restraint. Lucas, being stared at by me with a ravenous gaze, remained completely unaware, still lost in his false sense of victory. By then, our poor Sarah will be thrown into prison, wasting the best years of her life. And you will never see me again. He propped his chin, his pupils contracting with excitement, his dark eyes and red lips giving him an exceptionally sinister look. Although the crimes you committed against me are unforgivable, we were once husband and wife after all. How could I bear to treat you this way? I feigned weakness, pitifully softening my tone. What do you want? You don't seem to be in a position to negotiate with me right now. Lucas assumed the posture of a business negotiation, clasping his hands, leaning back, with a slight smile on his face. Sarah, haven't you heard the saying, it's easier to invite the devil in than to send him away? Since you provoked me, you should pay some price. I lowered my head, my shoulders trembling slightly, as if I were extremely frightened. Then, what do you want to do with me? The words, my husband, greatly pleased Lucas. He lifted his chin with pride, his eyes growing darker, like a deep spring in the night. Once drawn in by the shimmering ripples, one would drown in them. It depends on your performance. Lucas spoke only these few simple words. I hunched my shoulders, covered my mouth with my hand, and nodded as if sobbing. Husband, as long as you don't leave me, I'll do anything. It's so hilarious. I really couldn't hold back and almost burst out laughing. Lucas, you really are a self-righteous fool. You don't know that a gambler can't be the dealer. The moment you developed a competitive desire towards me, you had already lost. You can't escape anymore. a thin slip dress and a silver chain were thrown in front of me. Lucas smiled maliciously, repeating the exact same words back to me. You look beautiful in white, like an angel. Did he want to see my humiliated expression? I quickly took off all my clothes and stood barefoot in front of him. Lucas turned his face away as if he had been scalded, his face flushed and flustered. Who told you to undress in front of me? We've already slept together. What's there to be shy about? I hooked my hand around his and said innocently, Husband, there are too many straps on this dress. I don't know how to put it on. Help me. Lucas made me sleep in the dog crate again. I obediently crawled inside and barked at him. He grew impatient with my barking, his refined and handsome features furrowing. What's wrong? I lifted my face, rubbed the top of my head against his calf, and pretended to lick my wrist. Do you want to take a bath? Lucas had a strange expression on his face, as if he was holding back, or perhaps gritting his teeth. He yanked me up, unable to hold back any longer, and said, Stop wiggling your butt around, Sarah, don't you have any shame? I draped myself limply in his arms and said with a giggle, Woof woof, doesn't master like it? Lucas can't do anything to me. I have no self-respect, nor do I feel humiliation. If he wants to retaliate for everything I've done to him, the only effective way would be to disappear from my sight immediately. But he won't. In the bathroom, I clung to him like a vine, tilting my head up to peck at his Adam's apple. Lucas was breathing heavily, his eyes glaring at me with resentment, his Adam's apple bobbing heavily. The mist was damp, his raven feather-like eyelashes were also moist and beautiful, with droplets rolling down one by one, which I licked away as if in worship. Drawing in the sweet dew, Sarah, a low groan, akin to a curse, rumbled in his throat. Even now, he still struggled. What exactly do you like about me? I love your madness, your sinfulness, your foolishness, your vulgarity, your disgrace. I love that you are a thorough villain through and through. You let me be unrestrained, without having to live in fear or flatter others. You make me dare to reveal my own madness, sinfulness, foolishness, vulgarity, and disgrace. You make me feel safe. Everything. I swallowed those words, stood on tiptoe, and gently kissed his lips, sighing as I looked at him. This is the most sincere moment of my life. I love everything about you, Lucas. That night, I successfully avoided the fate of sleeping in a dog crate. Lucas slept on the sofa, his bangs covering his forehead, looking quiet and well-behaved. I got up and tiptoed toward my bedroom, but just then, his voice unexpectedly came from the darkness. What exactly is hidden inside? I turned around and saw Lucas lazily propping up his upper body, resting his chin on one hand. His eyes were as dark and glossy as magnets, his expression filled with deep inquiry. You know me very well, but it seems I don't know you at all. His figure was outlined by the darkness, appearing oppressive and massive, like a dormant beast slowly rising to its feet. I don't know which university you attended, Sarah, where you live, what you've experienced growing up, or what kind of person you are. With every word Lucas spoke, he took a step closer to me. Before I knew it, he had me pinned between his body and the door, reaching out to press against the door handle as if embracing me. He arched his back, looking deeply into my eyes and asked, What is your secret? What is my secret? This is also an extremely cliched story, but it's not yet time for the reveal. I wrapped my arms around his neck, smiling as I pressed my forehead against his. Our gazes intertwined, probed, and teased each other in the darkness, like the glint of blades in a duel. I stared at him, the distance so close that with just a slight parting of my lips, they brushed and pressed against Lucas's. Amid the electrifying sensation, I said, A secret must be exchanged for another secret. He gave a faint, ambiguous smile, his eyelashes lowered as he leaned in to gently kiss the corner of my lips, yet his voice was cold as iron. Fine, what other secrets does Lucas have? His glory, pain, anger, desire, fear, and obsession, 2/3 of his life, are all closely tied to Mia. How could he possibly create new secrets for me? Over the weekend, I calmly returned the phone with the surveillance software installed to Lucas. Leo's assistant has been frantically looking for you, honey. It seems your company is in trouble. Under Lucas's meaningful gaze, I pointed at the incessantly ringing phone and said with a smile, As it happens, I have something to take care of outside. I arrived at the police station. The police officer contacting me had a serious expression. Student Sarah, We have received a report of a missing person. According to our investigation, you were the last person to see him. If you have any clues, please provide them to us truthfully. I sat relaxed in the chair, fingers interlaced, with a sweet smile. Of course, abiding by the law is every citizen's duty. All right, the person opposite began taking notes. 2 days ago, during your last meeting with Jack, what did he say? Yes, wait, did you say Jack? I was about to present the well-prepared draft I had in mind, but suddenly I stumbled and froze. Jack is missing. 2 days ago. My thoughts drifted back to the public class 2 days ago. Jack, holding his textbook, sat down next to me. The original host had pursued Jack with great fanfare, and after I transmigrated, I cleanly gave up on him. This had already become a hot gossip topic in the academy. Now that the parties involved were in the same frame, many people were openly or secretly watching, trying to get the scoop. Jack carefully observed my expression. I reported Lucas. Soon, the basement under his family's villa will be discovered, and his crimes will be exposed to the public. I calmly turned a page of my book. Oh, Jack looked at me with disgust. No matter how calmly you pretend, it's useless. Sarah, I won't be fooled by your act. You and Lucas are both rotten people, a perfect match for each other. I let out a chuckle. Jack demanded, what are you laughing at? Thank you for your blessing. I smiled, looking at him with a cheerful expression and sincerely wishing. I also hope you and Mia will have a long and happy union. Jack stormed off in anger, throwing a book aside, while I chose a dark and windy night to sneak into the villa and thoroughly clean up the traces in the basement, yet completely failed to notice that after that day, Jack never appeared again. As the memory ended, I widened my eyes innocently and sincerely, speaking each word deliberately. Are you suspecting me? Jack did warn me to stop pursuing him, but that's all in the past. I have a loving boyfriend now, and I'm too busy being happy to even think about him. How could I possibly still be paying attention to him? As for providing clues, I thought for a moment, why don't you check on Jack's girlfriend, Mia? Maybe they just went off to enjoy some time alone together. We will investigate further. Thank you for your cooperation, Sarah. You're welcome. There is a full-length mirror at the entrance of the police station, allowing me to clearly see my sweet and well-behaved face, gentle eyes, and slightly raised corners of my lips. This face has really saved me a lot of trouble. I touched the baby fat on my cheeks and smiled with satisfaction. When I got home, Lucas indeed hadn't left. He seemed to be in the middle of a video conference, impeccably dressed and strikingly handsome, so much so that even a critical gaze couldn't deny how heart-stoppingly attractive he was. I struck a delicate pose, puckering my lips to blow him a kiss. Lucas appeared to coldly avert his gaze, but his fluent English faltered for a moment as he switched to Chinese and said, meeting adjourned. The moment he closed his laptop, I immediately rushed over and threw myself into his arms. Lucas was knocked back onto the sofa by my impact, instinctively reaching out to steady my waist. That handsome face loomed closer before me, his breath slightly unsteady as he looked at me calmly. I couldn't wait to pull out the gift I had brought for him on the way. I have a surprise for you. What a coincidence. Lucas raised an eyebrow and said leisurely, I've prepared a surprise for you too. I instinctively reached to unbutton his clothes. Lucas gripped my wrist, gritting his teeth as he said, not this. He covered my eyes with his hand and led me to the bedroom door. His palm was dry and warm, and my eyelashes brushing against it created a strange, ticklish sensation. I held onto his arm, feeling both nervous and excited. Lucas's bedroom was crafted by my own hands. Rather than a bedroom, it was more like a torture device I had prepared for him. What kind of surprise could he possibly have hidden inside? Once silence fell, the stillness was magnified infinitely, and in the dead silence, some sound grew increasingly clear. Thump, thump, thump. There seemed to be something behind the door. Are you ready? Lucas's cheerful laughter echoed in my ears. He pushed me through the door and let go of my hand. Surprise. I stared at the person tied up in front of me, stunned. It was Jack. I had no idea how Lucas had managed to tie him up right under my nose, especially since the surveillance showed he hadn't left the house. Thinking about how he usually works with a laptop, did he overwrite a segment of the surveillance video back then? I smiled playfully, not showing the panicked expression Lucas wanted to see. Is he my gift for tonight? I walked over, and Jack, whose mouth was gagged, immediately let out angry muffled sounds. His skin was reddened by the chains. How pitiful. Lucas stopped my hand from reaching for his. It's a secret. He looked down at Jack with a gaze full of contempt and indifference. Was it because of Mia that he was taking it out on him? Was he jealous? The more annoyed I felt, the wider I smiled. A secret? There's nothing going on between us, honey. Are you jealous? Lucas's smile turned somewhat menacing, like a cunning fox. He finally let his true colors show. Sarah, you know how wonderful and hard won our life is now. So, he murmured softly, we have to make him disappear. We have to become accomplices, conspirators, partners. That's the strongest, most unbreakable secret, don't you think? So this was his plan all along for staying behind. Lucas wouldn't proactively report me to the police because he's not clean either. But Jack is different, judging by his murderous glare. He clearly fully embraced that shared guilt theory and utterly despises me. Once I let him out and he calls the police, it'll be like pulling up a radish. The dirt comes with it, and I'll be in trouble. Does Lucas want to tie me to his pirate ship this way, to completely control me? He really is a master at reading people's minds. I put on a betrayed and desperate expression, grabbed his arm, and sobbed. You've been lying to me all along, haven't you? You don't like me at all. You heard everything that day, didn't you? I'm not going to stay here forever. I need to go out and settle the score with Mia. Lucas gritted his teeth at the mention of Mia, clearly dissatisfied that she had never submitted to his tyranny. All right, I agree, I said with a heart full of despair. Let's trade our secrets. I led Lucas to the bedroom door and said quietly, haven't you always been curious about my past? I'll tell you everything. In the original story, the villainous Sarah's background was very similar to mine. When I was a child, my father died in an accident, and my once gentle and kind mother completely changed, becoming unbearably controlling, from trivial matters like how to place the bowls and chopsticks, what to wear for the day, and even the color of a hair tie, to major decisions like which high school and university to apply for. She had to control everything. One phrase she often said was, Mom loves you, that's why she cares for you and looks after you. Mom only has you, so please never leave me, okay? She domineeringly occupied my entire being, forcing me to constantly tread carefully, watch her every expression, and strive to please and obey. Yet, after she passed away, I didn't feel a sense of relief. Instead, I was left with a feeling of loss. I didn't know what to focus on or care about. After losing her, it felt as if my backbone had been pulled out, and I made a mess of my life, until I met my first boyfriend. He is young, lively, and passionate, whimpering like a little dog chasing after my heels, begging for my attention. The moment I turned my gaze to him, a silent satisfaction and fullness filled my spine, and I instinctively knew what I should do: care for him, be considerate of him, cherish him, and protect him without missing a beat. I speak of love constantly, wrapping myself around him like a cocoon, enveloping him tightly. Yes, that's it. A voice in my heart constantly drives me, encourages me, and tempts me to devour him, possess him, control him. This is love, selfless love, great love, fearless love. But later, he still ran away in fear. I looked up at Lucas with a smile, gazing at his handsome face, and couldn't help but exclaim, I searched for so long before finding someone like you, honey. If it's you, you'll definitely understand me. We're a perfect match made in heaven. Lucas's face turned pale, as if he had finally understood something. His fingertips trembled slightly, and his entire body radiated intense disappointment and resistance. We're not the same, Sarah. You don't understand love at all. You're just a monster, imitating love. A monster. It seems someone has said that before. I pushed the door open carelessly. Then what is your love? Invasion, plunder, coercion. Is the person you love Mia? The lights suddenly blazed, illuminating the countless screens before me with every detail exposed. Every day, every night, every minute, every second, I stay alone in the room, admiring Lucas in the darkness, observing his every smile, his every move. Of course, the most captivating is the large screen in the center, where a girl sits quietly on a chair, her head bowed like a withered flower. Lucas seemed as if his vocal cords had been violently seized, his pupils contracting sharply, his eyes wide with shock. I smoothed my skirt and sat down, elegantly crossing my legs, resting my chin on my hand as I watched his ridiculous expression. What is love? You can teach me now. darling, Mia." Lucas instinctively lunged forward, but the Mia on the screen showed no reaction. He abruptly turned his head, clearly recognizing that it was his villa. "If you dare step out of this door, I'll detonate the bomb on Mia," I said with a sinister tone. Lucas suddenly halted, the veins at his temples throbbing as he struggled to suppress his emotions. "Are you threatening me?" Those beautiful peach blossom eyes were now tinged with crimson. He took several deep breaths, unwilling to be controlled by me once again. "What do you want? Don't hurt her." I stood on tiptoe, delightedly watching his helplessness, as if a row of tiny, sharp teeth had grown in my heart, gnawing away incessantly, making it impossible to resist. "I want to create secrets too, darling. Isn't it a bit unfair if only I'm the one leaving evidence behind?" I fiddled with the detonator in my hand, and Lucas's gaze involuntarily followed my fingers. He responded with a hint of sarcasm. "Is there anything you don't know? Actually, there is one thing. In the novel, Lucas had a safe. That safe contained all the evidence of his crimes. From murder to collusion with officials and businessmen. It wasn't until he was arrested and imprisoned that the safe was forcibly opened, and the very next day after it was opened, he died. Such an important thing should, of course, be kept by me. I want the password to your safe." I stared straight at Lucas. "Well, is your dream girl worth that much?" Lucas gritted his teeth and squeezed out a few words. "Do you think you can threaten me with her, Sarah? I'm not crazy, who knows?" Lucas and I locked eyes, driven by a strange sense of rivalry, neither of us willing to look away. Lucas was so angry that his eyes turned red, as if he were about to cry at any moment. After what felt like an eternity, he finally spoke in a ghostly tone. 240613. This was the day he imprisoned Mia. The person he had yearned for in his youth had finally fallen into his grasp. Of course, he had to remember this special day. "Are you using it as a password to lock away your own sins?" "But, my dear husband, your love was a mistake from the very beginning." Lucas's voice was hoarse as he stared intently at me. "In exchange, you must kill Jack. This is a secret that belongs only to the two of us." "Okay." I casually tossed the button to Lucas, then rummaged under the bed for the toolbox, grabbed a wrench, and walked out of the room. Lucas followed closely behind me, seemingly surprised by how quickly I had taken action. Holding the wrench, I looked at Jack with pity and said, "I told you earlier, I was the one who sent that invitation. Why didn't you believe me?" Clang! The wrench clashed against the iron cage, creating a brilliant shower of sparks. The bars were bent from the impact. Instinctively, Jack raised his arm to block, and with a sharp crack, the chain around his wrist shattered. He clutched his left wrist in pain, his hand hanging limply as if dislocated. I shook my numb arm, while Jack seized the opportunity to kick the cage open, caught off guard. I was knocked to the ground by the force, and the wrench slid clattering across the floor, stopping at Lucas's feet behind me. Before Lucas could react, Jack's eyes turned red with rage. He let out a shout and charged straight at Lucas. The two of them crashed onto the floor, and Jack grabbed whatever was nearby, wildly striking Lucas with it. The sounds of panting, groaning, and fighting mingled together. I stood there in my white dress, noticing how the hem of my skirt had become damp and heavy. I looked down and saw that it was splattered with a handful of blood. I stood still, the smile at the corner of my lips gradually widening. The jagged edges in my chest gnawed at my heart, making my fingertips tremble, my breath quicken, and my face flush. "Lucas, Jack," I softly called out their names. "Stop fighting. Come on, look at the camera." Crack! "This is my most satisfying piece of work. Renowned entrepreneur in our country is suspected of financial misappropriation and has fled abroad. A large amount of cash was discovered in his villa by the police. The case is currently under further investigation. The morning news is playing on the screen. Have some water, honey." I pushed open the door to the hospital room and saw Lucas staring intently at the screen. I smiled slightly, picked up the remote, and changed the channel. A week after Lucas woke up, he remained silent the entire time. If the doctor hadn't confirmed that his vocal cords were fine, I might have suspected he had become mute. I inserted a straw into the water glass and brought it to his lips. Lucas numbly opened his mouth to sip, his eyelids lowered, refusing to meet my gaze. I found it somewhat amusing. "Are you still angry with me? If you hadn't brought Jack into this, why would I have resorted to such measures? Now that I have evidence of him harming you, He doesn't dare act recklessly. Although he reported your company, I had already transferred a sum of money, enough for us to live comfortably. I even used the evidence from the safe to call in a favor, so you can stay in the country without worry. The police won't investigate you anymore. I even generously let Mia go, darling. I did all of this for you, for us. I held his bandaged hand and called his name sweetly. Now, the name, Lucas, no longer belongs to you, in this entire world. Only I know who you are. Your past, present, and future. We belong to each other and will never be apart. I had said similar things to him countless times over the past week. Lucas, as always, kept his head lowered, and I couldn't tell if he was listening or not. I was not discouraged at all. Everything about him was now firmly in my grasp, sooner or later. He would come to understand. I picked up the fairy tale book beside me and opened it. Today's story is about the Peacock Prince. A long, long time ago, there was a proud peacock prince on the Great Plains. He was the last peacock on the plains, which made him especially proud. He often strutted around with his magnificent tail feathers spread wide. If anyone mocked him for his bald appearance when he was young, he would peck their bottoms fiercely, among ground birds. He was the only one who could fly, and among flying birds, he was the most beautiful. This uniqueness made the peacock prince feel elated, but soon, he began to taste the bitterness of loneliness. Ground birds saw him as a flying oddity, while flying birds mocked him as a flashy but incompetent flyer. He was ostracized, and no one was willing to accept him. Among all the birds, the only one who never mocked the peacock prince was a plump little sparrow. The peacock prince remembered her kindness and, in an extraordinary act of grace, deemed the sparrow worthy of being his companion. But the little sparrow already had another little sparrow. With his tall stature, sharp claws, and beautiful feathers, the peacock prince successfully snatched the little sparrow away. However, sparrows are inherently stubborn. When captured by humans, they would rather starve to death than eat a single grain of rice. How could they possibly submit to the peacock's tyranny? My voice was sweet and clear, narrating the story gently, but Lucas grew increasingly furious, his fingers clenching tightly as a hoarse roar erupted from his throat. Stop reading, I continued. The clever sparrow joined forces with humans and captured the peacock prince. The human greatly admired his beautiful feathers and robust physique. She praised the peacock prince, saying, "You are one of a kind among all the birds and beasts. Those foolish birds are not worthy of you. You should stay in my garden." She gave him a golden cage, plump grains, snow water from the sky mountains, and groomed his feathers every day. Yet the peacock remained ungrateful. Tell me, what should humans do with him? I closed the book, reached out, and grabbed Lucas's hair, forcing him to lift his head. 2 lines of tears rolled down the corners of Lucas's eyes. He wept expressionlessly, his eyes red and moist, yet he made no sound. Pitiful. I leaned in, kissed away his tears, and said in a slow, gentle voice, "You and I are the same kind of people. You are a beast, and I am a beast in human skin. Only I can understand you. Only I can accept you. Only I will love you. Don't you see it yet?" A deep despair surfaced in Lucas's eyes. "All of this was part of your plan. You never intended to let me go from the very beginning, did you?" I gazed at him fervently. "I love you. You just see me as your dog. A tool to satisfy your need for control. I love you. When that little bastard Jack was hitting me, you just stood there, watching and laughing. I love you." Lucas was trembling all over from crying, his shoulders slumped, and he buried his head exhaustedly into my arms. "Sarah, yes, I'm here. Honey, let's just entangle like this until death." While choosing an engagement ring with Lucas, I ran into 2 acquaintances. It was Mia and Jack. They were originally strolling arm in arm. But when they saw me, they looked as if struck by lightning. Jack instinctively shielded Mia behind him. "Sarah," he followed my gaze and saw Lucas behind me. After several months, Lucas had been nursed back to health by me, standing tall and confident, dressed in a white suit. His calm eyes briefly swept over the 2 of them as if he didn't recognize them. I nodded to him. "Go pay first." Mia's teeth chattered. "Lucas, it must be Lucas. Isn't he supposed to be abroad?" Jack was also furious. "Sarah, how dare you still hang out with that kind of person? You've mistaken him for someone else." "That's my fiancé," I said displeased. "Mr. Jack, please show some respect and don't act like a violent maniac." The implication in my words reminded Jack of the terrifying experience when he nearly beat Lucas to death. His face turned pale, and he fell silent. I smiled and warned them, I've never known anyone named Lucas. Whatever grudges or entanglements you have with him, don't drag me into it. If anyone disturbs the happy life I share with my husband. My eyes flashed with murderous intent, yet my smile remained sweet and gentle. I'll kill them. After sending the two away, I returned to the counter, but Lucas was no longer there. A familiar tremor surged through my body like a tidal wave. With trembling hands, I pulled a miniature stun gun from my bag and asked, "Excuse me, have you seen where my husband went, Sarah?" Lucas's voice came from behind. Without a second thought, I turned around with a sweet smile and stabbed backward. My wrist was suddenly grabbed. Lucas, still shaken, stood up holding the flowers in his hands. "Are you crazy?" I looked at the staff behind him, awkwardly holding balloons and cameras, and finally realized, "Are you proposing?" "I thought you were going to run away again." Lucas glared at me, reached out to cover my mouth, and his ears instantly turned red. He gritted his teeth and whispered, "You put that thing on me. How could I run? Sarah, you have no shame." "But I still do." I smiled and stretched out my hand. "In that case, you should put one on me too." Lucas instinctively glanced down, his face flushing red. "Shameless, what are you thinking about?" I said with a playful smile. "I meant the engagement ring." "Are you willing?" "Of course." "And honey," I reached out, intertwining my fingers with his, "I want to install another camera in the bathroom." "Pervert, so you agree?" "Don't install it on the toilet, late at night." I opened my eyes. Lucas was sleeping deeply beside me, his breathing steady and gentle. I got up and gazed at his profile bathed in moonlight. After a long while, his eyelashes fluttered slightly. "I know you're awake," I said, my voice as faint as a ghost's whisper. Lucas opened his eyes helplessly. After so many times, even if he woke up in the middle of the night and suddenly found me staring at him like an owl, he wouldn't be scared anymore. "What's wrong again?" I had just started speaking when Lucas skillfully cut me off and continued, "We will always be together. I will never betray you. I love you. We are the same kind of people. Aren't you tired of asking this every day?" Not enough, still not enough. I want to crawl into his internal organs, replace his brain, his heart, merge into every one of his blood vessels, every nerve. Mere sweet words cannot satisfy my heart, which is so greedy. Lucas was silent for a moment. "I'm tired, Sarah. I've accepted my fate. Can you please find peace too? If you're still worried, let's have a child." "No children," I retorted sharply. "I won't allow myself to give birth to a monster." "Then what do you want to do?" Lucas yawned. He was now working as a professor at a university under a new identity and was very popular among the students. "I have a lecture tomorrow and need to rest early." I pulled out something I had prepared long ago from under the pillow. "Wear this to work tomorrow." Lucas was stunned. "What?" "I'm worried," I said gloomily. "Otherwise, I always feel like you might cheat, and I'll go too. I want to watch you from the audience." The next day at the lecture, as I watched Lucas speaking confidently under the spotlight, I expressionlessly flipped the switch. Regarding this issue, ugh, Lucas was halfway through his speech when he suddenly let out a sharp gasp. He immediately covered his mouth and glared angrily around the room. I stood up and slowly walked away. After the lecture ended, he found me, cornered me against the wall, and said with a cold expression, "Sarah, have you had enough of this? Honey, you're hurting me." I looked at him timidly, tears streaming down my face like a delicate flower. Lucas was extremely irritated. "Don't give me that nonsense. There's a time and place for being willful." "Excuse me, are you Mr. Simon and Ms. Sarah?" Two police officers suddenly appeared behind us. "Someone reported you for suspected domestic violence. Please come with us." Inside the familiar police station, the officers were taking photos of the marks on Lucas's body as evidence. When they saw what he was wearing, they all showed expressions of hesitation, as if wanting to say something but holding back. In the end, one of them hinted encouragingly, "Don't carry any psychological burden, speak up boldly, and we will stand up for you," and looked at me indignantly, his eyes filled with reproach. Lucas was utterly mortified, stammering as he explained, "It's all a misunderstanding, actually. She treats me quite well. This is just a bit of marital fun." He looked at me, his eyes filled with both embarrassment and dependence, It was like a refreshing downpour extinguishing the restless fire that had been tormenting me. I sat quietly in the chair, watching him walk toward me step by step. The beast within my heart finally quieted down, ushering in a long-lost sense of peace. I seemed to have a feeling, and at this moment, Lucas reached out his hand, his voice gentle. "Let's go, my dear, let's go home." And from then on, the Peacock Prince and the Sparrow lived happily ever after. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.